Psycho Killer is a 2026 thriller written by Andrew Kevin Walker, the man who wrote 7, 8mm, and Sleepy Hollow. Let's get into it. We open on a desolate winter highway in Kansas. A driver in sunglasses is gripping the wheel, and just ahead, a state trooper named Mike is parked on the roadside. The trooper's vehicle follows close behind as the driver passes. Mike approaches and asks what the problem is. The driver claims he just pulled over to rest. Mike asks what brings him to Colby. Passing through. He asks for the license and registration. The driver says he has to find them. The car is messy. Mike's wife, Jane, also a Kansas Highway Patrol officer, happens to be passing by in her own car. She radios her husband casually. Mike tells her he suspects drug charges within minutes. He asks her to make meatloaf tonight. She laughs, says she'll be asleep before he gets home. She starts to leave. 20 seconds of married cop banter. The film uses every second of it to make you feel the weight of what's coming. Mike is still waiting for the driver to produce the documents. Jane, thinking she should stay to make sure nothing goes wrong, turns back around and calls dispatch to pull up the latest bulletin on interstate homicides. And before the response even comes through, a gunshot. The driver reverses at full speed, ramming the trooper's car. Jane is pushed back. The driver floors it and escapes. Jane empties her gun trying to stop him. She can't. She's on the radio immediately. 10:49, shots fired, trooper down, shooter eastbound. She gets to Mike and holds him on the frozen pavement. "Honey, it's Jane. Everything's gonna be okay." It isn't. Mike stops breathing. Her father arrives at the hospital only to hear that he's already gone. The killer checks into a motel. He turns on the TV, and he's already a national story. The media is calling him the Satanic Slasher. 15 victims across 6 states. Satanic symbols and graphic writing left at every crime scene, written in the victim's blood. He watches for a moment. Then he goes to sleep. Inside the closet, shotgun in his hands. Then somewhere on highway, the killer is driving again. He targets a pharmacy, waits in his car until evening, watching. A young woman comes out of the store and gets into her car. He attacks her. Then he goes inside the pharmacy and takes what he actually came for. Painkillers. Percocet, Percodan, OxyContin. He is not dealing. He is taking all of it himself. The next day, Jane gets an update. The killer ditched his car. There's another victim. He took her ID, everything. No way to identify her. No leads on what he's driving now. Jane is ordered into mandatory therapy, less than 48 hours since she buried her husband. The therapist talks about survivor's guilt, about being a woman in a predominantly male field, about the emotional weight of watching someone die and wrongly blaming yourself for it. Jane sits through the full hour because she has to. When time is up, she says exactly that, only here because it's mandatory. Then, in one unguarded second before she walks out, she admits she doesn't know what she's going to do without her husband. That's the only crack in the wall. Then the door closes. Elsewhere, the slasher is in another motel. He spreads all the stolen medication out on the bed, and he looks down at a new tattoo on the back of his hand. No mercy. That night, Jane is asleep, but the nightmare of that day is still running. She wakes up and starts doing her own research on the killings. She connects the murder of her husband to the Satanic Slasher's spree and decides she is going after him herself. Her father tries to stop her. She's already made up her mind. He tells her the uniform is who she is, but warns her not to treat it like armor. She tells him she's taken 2 weeks of provisional leave. He says Mike's death wasn't her fault. She knows that. What she wants is the shot she didn't get on that highway. 1 bullet to end this, and maybe she gets to sleep at night. Her father pushes back. Jane says she's done talking, and nothing is going to stop her. He concedes. Keep your gun and badge on you at all times. Pointless as this is, if he were her, he'd probably need to find that out for himself, too. Meanwhile, the slasher is still moving. He spots a couple stranded on the side of a highway. A man changing a tire, his wife waiting in the car. The slasher parks around a corner, takes some pills, and approaches the man. He kills him with a sledgehammer. The wife hears the noise, gets out to check, and sees the body. She runs. She makes it to the road, stands directly in the path of an oncoming truck to flag it down. The truck brakes hard at the last second. The crash kills her. The slasher watches the vehicle catch fire from a distance. Then he walks back, dips his hand in the blood of the dead couple, and draws a pentagram on the car. Jane works through every FBI agent she can get on the phone, trying to access the killer's case files. Every door closes. Somewhere in a phone booth, the killer is on a call with an ad agency. He wants to print an ad in the newspaper. The first line reads, MNO. To those who also share faith, seeking our mutual friend. Need help? Please reply. Jane eventually goes to the FBI field office in Topeka to get in front of Agent Zolan directly, the agent running the investigation. She introduces herself, explains the murdered trooper was her husband, that she was there when he died. Zolan expresses sympathy and tells her to go home. Clean. Final. Back at her hotel that night, Jane checks a pregnancy test. She's pregnant. The film says nothing about it out loud. It just moves on. Remember that. Then FBI agent Becky Collins calls. She was in Zolan's office when Jane came in. She arranges a secret meeting, warns Jane up front that if Zolan finds out she's sharing information, she's finished. Over drinks, Becky walks Jane through everything the FBI has. The slasher has been killing for painkillers and psychotropics, taking every drug himself, not dealing. He broke into a gun shop in Nevada after hours and walked out with at least one pistol, a shotgun, plenty of ammunition, and a collector's secret stash of hand grenades. At a public library in Cedar City, Utah, he killed the security guard and the librarian and stole exactly 2 books from a set of encyclopedias, volumes N and T. He travels east from motel to motel, paying cash. At every crime scene, the same inscription in blood: "Open the gates." Becky takes Jane to one of the motels to show her firsthand. The maid had ignored the "Do Not Disturb" sign. The slasher cut her in half with an axe. Jane pulls up the church killings from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania on Becky's computer. Richard Joshua Reeves, a Satanist who murdered 13 people inside Christ Cross Church. Becky says their guy isn't copycatting. The symbols overlap, but he's not the same. Jane says maybe he's inspired by him, following his footsteps. Based on the distances the slasher has been traveling, Becky places him between Columbus, Ohio and Wheeling, West Virginia within the next day or two. And one last piece, 20 pounds of volatile TNT stolen from a construction company near Kansas City, enough to do significant damage. Back at his motel, the slasher is watching the news. A reporter covers the satanic ritualistic murders of past years, and then comes to Richard Reeves, who killed every hostage he had, claimed human sacrifice was his obligation to Satan. The slasher watches with complete focus. Jane is driving back to her motel, listening to a podcast. The host mentions that the government has been keeping criminals in secret military prisons for experiments. Now one of those criminals has finally escaped. She files that away too. The next day, the slasher visits a church. A priest is alone, finishing up. He sees someone enter and assumes they've come to confess. The slasher sits in the booth. He tells the priest he has always liked priests, that when he was a young boy, his priest took him under his wing, made him into the man he is today. The priest says that's good, asks if he's come to confess. Not exactly. The slasher attacks the priest with a rod pipe into his neck and drinks the blood coming out of it. That night, Jane is in a diner. Someone offers her congratulations. She asks for a glass of milk. She has just learned that a satanic metal band built an entire album around Richard Joshua Reeves's mythology and identity, and the slasher has been quoting their lyrics on the walls near his crime scenes. The next day, Jane is in her car watching a news segment on her laptop. Reeves murdered 13 people, claimed human sacrifice was his obligation to Satan. Harrisburg police captured him alive. In 2004, facing a death sentence, Reeves was shot and killed while attacking a prison guard in federal prison. Jane works the motels along the slasher's projected route, running his profile past desk clerks. White male, traveling alone, paying cash. One clerk checks the guest register and finds a name that stops Jane cold. R.J. Reeves, room 105, checked in last night. She gets the key, tells the clerk to call the police immediately. This is real. She approaches room 105, weapon drawn, clears the corners, moves slowly. She notices a newspaper ad the slasher had printed through the agency. She reaches for the bathroom door, and a masked figure lunges from the shadows, skull-like, demonic. They fight hard across the room. Jane uses everything she can reach, but he throws her out. Before the police arrive, he's already moved his things out a window and is gone. Jane goes to the library, picks up today's newspaper, and finds the ad with the MNO headline, which is a response to Slasher's ad. She decodes it. The enlightened welcome all fellow believers, and a telephone number. The slasher has also found the same number. He calls. He's looking for someone, needs it done discreetly, needs it offline. He gets an invitation. Come tonight, Mr. Pendleton is hosting associates. He heads there. Jane reaches out to Becky to match an address to the phone number. And now both of them, the hunter and the hunted, are heading to the same estate. A man named Marvin, a true and dedicated Satanist, greets the slasher at a broken gate, struggles to open it, escorts him inside the lavish property. Inside, Mr. Pendleton holds court. The same man whose speech the slasher listened to on the radio, now in person, delivering a passionate speech about Satan ruling the modern world, oil conglomerates, government corruption, and human depravity. The assembled group chants. The slasher sits through all of it without engaging. He's not here for the sermon. He needs information on a specific person. Pendleton directs him to Marvin. Marvin takes him to a private room and asks who he's looking for. The slasher's answer genuinely unsettles Marvin. He doesn't know the person's name, doesn't know where they live, only knows what they do for a living. Marvin is confused. The slasher says knowing their job is enough to find them. In the morning, the slasher watches a news report. Jane, right after her husband's death, giving a statement to the media. If she can help catch the killer, she will. The slasher takes note. Meanwhile, Jane is on a call with Zolan. He tells her to pack up and leave. The FBI already investigated the newspaper ads weeks ago and found no evidence connecting them to the slasher. Jane doesn't budge. That evening, Jane gets a recorded message from the slasher himself. He tells her he's flattered that she's been following his work. He will be leaving some new pieces along the way, and on the 28th, they will open the gates. Next morning, the ritual happens at Pendleton's estate. Pendleton leads his followers through the full ceremony, chanting, dark communion, the group hailing Satan in unison. The slasher watches from the side and walks out. Marvin meets him with the information his private detective gathered, a name and a home address. The slasher takes it and heads for his car without a word. Marvin chases after him, says it's basic courtesy to at least say goodbye to Pendleton. The slasher stops. He puts on his mask. He turns. Marvin sees what he's carrying, a pickaxe. And Marvin understands, in full, exactly who this man is. The slasher tells him he considers him a true Satanist, which is the only reason he'll let him leave tonight. But if Marvin ever breaks his silence, he will find him. Marvin leaves. He does not look back. The slasher goes back inside and kills everyone in Pendleton's estate one by one. He sets the building on fire. Before leaving, he props his mask on a stick in the window, a deliberate taunt. Jane is outside. She shoots it. The slasher reaches his car. She tries to follow, but he rams her car and escapes. She stands in the street, screaming at the police officers who just arrived. She called them before she even got here. They're still skeptical. She lays her entire theory out for them. Richard Joshua Reeves, the Christ Cross Church Massacre, the satanic metal band that turned him into mythology. The slasher is following Reeves's blueprint and intends to finish what Reeves started. Jane believes the slasher will go to the same church where Reeves murdered his hostages to complete the mission. She goes there and waits. No one comes. Then she sees it. 3MI, written on a wall. She raises her gun and uses the scope to scan the horizon. And she sees a nuclear reactor. Everything clicks. News coverage was running the 3 Mile Island anniversary, the 1979 nuclear incident in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Jane already knows the slasher stole encyclopedia volumes N and T, nuclear and TNT. She knows about the 20 pounds of volatile explosives and the hand grenades. And now she knows exactly where he's heading. She calls the police immediately. There is an imminent attack on 3 Mile Island. The slasher has already gone to Wilkes's home in Pennsylvania. Wilkes and his wife are there. The slasher takes them hostage and tells Wilkes simply, "Cooperate or she dies." Later, Wilkes drives to work. The slasher is hidden in the car. Plant security checks the vehicle and waves them through. Once inside, the slasher throws a grenade into a security checkpoint, killing the guards. He forces Wilkes, called Leo inside the plant, onto the control terminals to purge all coolant from the reactor core and override every failsafe in the system. Water levels plummet. Core temperature climbs. The The emergency systems begin to fail one by one. Jane arrives at 3 Mile Island, identifies herself, and warns the gate security that an attack is imminent. The slasher is already inside. The sirens go off before she finishes the sentence. The engineers confirm it. Leo is flushing the core, overriding everything manually from the inside. The chief officer wants to negotiate. Jane tells him there is no negotiation. The man in that control room is the Satanic slasher, and this has always been his plan. His suicide. He brought the explosives to destroy the IC system. If that TNT goes off and takes out the integrated control system, the plant goes into catastrophic failure. Security is ordered to breach. Police arrive and run inside. But every access point is sealed against radiation leaks. There is no way in. Jane watches through a CCTV camera as the slasher kills Leo. He pulls off his outer layer to reveal 20 pounds of TNT strapped to his body. Jane says he's going to blow the whole place up. She needs a way in. A security guard takes her across the building to a room where she can see the control room through thick glass. Inside, the slasher cuts his own hand and draws a pentagram on the floor in his blood. Then he holds up a hand grenade, the detonator. The security guard standing next to Jane takes one look at this, says sorry, and runs. Jane picks up the rifle he left behind. She decides to penetrate the thick plexiglass window with a direct sightline into the control room, almost certainly bulletproof. She starts shooting anyway, again and again, working the same spots, cracking the surface until the barrel fits through. The slasher raises his arms. He shouts, "Hail Satan," calls on Almighty Diabolus to open the gates of damnation and welcome his servant. He pulls the pin on the grenade. Jane fires through the crack in the glass. The grenade drops. It explodes, but the TNT on his body doesn't detonate. She shoots again. He collapses. Go to hell, psycho. One more shot. The aftermath dominates every news broadcast in the country. At least 48 deaths on his spree. Speculation about whether the killer is really Richard Joshua Reeves. The FBI releases a statement. The 3 Mile Island killer has suffered fatal gunshot wounds, including one to the head. Case closed. Months later, Jane is preparing a nursery. She goes to Mike's closet and looks at his uniform. Then the slasher appears behind her, and she wakes up. A nightmare. She goes outside and carefully checks the neighborhood before going back in. And then the final scene. Death Valley, California. The slasher opens his eyes inside a vehicle as it pulls into a remote location in the desert. One of the men says, "Welcome home, Reeves. Death Valley missed you." Andrew Kevin Walker wrote 7. He wrote 8 M&M and Sleepy Hollow. The man knows how to construct a killer who feels like an unstoppable force and a protagonist who is slowly losing ground to something she can't fully see yet. That architecture is sitting right there inside Psycho Killer, in the parallel tracking of Jane and the slasher, in the nuclear plant endgame, in the way the film builds its mythology through news broadcasts and crime scenes. And then, Gavin Polone directed it. Polone is an outstanding producer. Cold Storage, Zombieland, a long track record of genuinely good genre instincts behind the scenes. But producing and directing are completely different crafts, and this film does not hide that gap for a single scene. Moments that should make your skin crawl land completely flat. The slasher's kills are staged without rhythm or menace. The middle act loses its footing and never fully recovers. A better director extracts the dread that is clearly written into this material. This one lets it evaporate quietly. The pregnancy is in the film. It is established with a test in a hotel bathroom and then acknowledged once more with a glass of milk in a diner. And then, it is never used for anything. In a 91-minute film, choosing to include a detail and then doing absolutely nothing with it is not a neutral choice. It actively takes up space that could have deepened a character the script is already struggling to give enough room to breathe. That is a failure of follow-through, not of ambition, of follow-through. Malcolm McDowell is in this film for one scene. He is entertaining for exactly as long as he is on screen. The moment he leaves, you ask yourself what the point was. And the honest answer is that the filmmakers got Malcolm McDowell to say yes and wrote him in. His performance is fine. What the film does with him is not. Here is what actually works. Georgina Campbell is doing real, considered work in a film that gives her less than she deserves. Jane Archer, as written, has no real unraveling, no moment where she genuinely crosses a line and has to face what she's becoming. But Campbell plays her like a woman who has decided to carry something and is simply not going to put it down, and that discipline is visible in every single scene. She makes Jane feel like a full human being, despite the script handing her a sketch. James Preston Rogers as the slasher is genuinely unsettling in the first half. The decision to keep his face mostly obscured is correct. A masked killer whose movements are controlled and deliberate is far more frightening than one you fully mapped out. The film should have protected that mystery longer than it does. The ending is the most divisive thing about this film. The slasher survived. People in Death Valley were waiting for him. It is a sequel hook wearing a twist's clothing, and the problem is the film hasn't built enough mythology around this character for that final image to feel like a revelation. It feels like a door left open in case the numbers cooperate. There is a genuinely good thriller buried inside Psycho Killer. A grieving cop, a Satanist on a suicide mission, a nuclear plant on the anniversary of its worst day, and a woman who refuses to stop. That is a film worth making. What we got is an under-directed draft of it, carrying a performance at its center that the film absolutely does not deserve. Overall, 5 out of 10. The writer of Seven, the killer of potential. A film that had every reason to work and found a way not to. That's Psycho Killer. If you watched it and felt cheated, you were right to. If you haven't seen it, now you know whether it's worth your time. If you liked the video, kindly hit the subscribe button for more upcoming videos. Thank you for watching.